What's up, everyone? This is Shiv. So, we're going to be doing today's week ahead presentation for March 8th through the 12th. We'll go ahead and get started in just a few minutes. Let everyone join in, and we'll get started. All right, welcome everyone to today's live stream for the week ahead presentation. I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen. All right. So let's jump right into it. We got this weekend, $1.9 trillion relief bill was passed. The House plans for approval on this on Tuesday. Biden did come out and say that stimulus checks will be delivered this month after approval from the House. So this was the weekend headline. This was sort of the big deal. And we'll be looking for the reaction in the futures and Monday's pre-market and opening session. Particularly, do we see a continuation? Do we see a pop and a drop, symbolizing that that news was priced in and, the market doesn't take it as a big deal? Or do we see, a strong continuation, a bounce that brings us back towards highs or even new all-time highs? Is this the headline that we needed? Is this the move? So, really we're trying to take this headline and use the reaction that we see in the market in the next couple hours as well as Monday morning to gauge the overall sentiment. So now let's talk about the sentiment from last week. You have hedge fund exposure illustrated here in this first picture. Hedge fund exposure dropping into the previous week, so we did see the funds come out. Fund flows were lower. Uh, Underneath this is the risk appetite. You can see risk appetite plunged there. Now, I thought that this was interesting. Not sure if it was updated. It was updated at March 5th at 6:30. So the fear greed index is 58, showing greed, and that's following Friday's session. For all of you that were watching on Friday, you had a um, big move up in the overall markets, and I guess that's what put this fear greed index at 59. Right. So then I posted this week about the ARK fund. I like to track their buys and sells. So you can see here that they bought DraftKings, a lot of it. They bought this Repair Therapeutics. They bought a little bit of Zillow. They bought more Palantir, which is very interesting. And we'll talk about that later. I do have Palantir on the watch list for this week. They bought a little bit of Workhorse, some SPCE, and some TTD, and of course adding more and more to their Tesla position as Tesla continues to drop. Another one there is Roku. I know Kathy Wood is very bullish on Roku. She has a pretty good stance on their platform as a whole. All right, so that was their buys. These are some of their sells. They got out of some Nvidia, some Apple and Facebook, Spotify, which was interesting. I wonder why they got out of that, and Amazon. So those are ARK. So now let's take a look at the sectors. So this is just showing Friday's relative performance. You had energy as your leader, right behind industrials, basic materials, communication services, and so on. Consumer cyclical was the laggard, and interesting to note that tech was was in the bottom five. I would have liked to see tech a little bit higher as they have gotten pretty beat up. You can see under this, that's a good segue to the 1 week relative performance. Energy really the leader here. Financials also getting a strong bid. If you take a look at the XLF, that is the ETF on financials, you will see that there is some relative strength there, some names that are associated that I liked yesterday were Capital One, which is COP or COM. Have to double check that. JPM and BAC, those were some pretty strong contenders on that financial sector. Um, and then following that with industrials, that's your top three sort of. I thought that communication services was also interesting as they weren't red, they weren't particularly too green either in terms of relative performance. So maybe that's one that you could see rotate to one side this week. So I did do a scan with just communication services, and I have a couple of those stocks in my book. And taking a look at the 1 and the 3 month relative performance, kind of getting the same picture here with energy and financials really leading. And then you have that communication services right in the middle there, which I think is still pretty interesting and one to look at for a rotation or just some action in those names. All right. And of course, the laggard in the 1 month is consumer cyclical and then tech. And then on the 3 month, you have utilities. One thing to really note here, I guess you could say, is tech has given up a lot of its gains in the last 3 months. So I'd be looking for the sentiment and headlines within that specific sector as well to see, where they'll take this next. Is there more downside due in tech or is there further upside due in tech? So that's something that I'll definitely be looking out for. Your year-to-date relative performance right there, just for your reference. I'll post this document in the Discord shortly after we're done. So in case you want to go back and take a look at any of the data, you are more than welcome to. So here's the heat map. Um, Apple, pretty interesting, broke even for the week. I think that's one to watch this week as well. You had Visa, which was good. Some other notable names. Facebook, Tesla are on my list. Google, don't really like trading Google, but could be one to watch. And then in your energy sector, you had XOM, CBX, totally the big names in that sector. So that's the heat map. Now, moving on to option flows. So your unfiltered flows, you had a bullish reading with the PC ratio of 0.73. That's 6.5 million calls versus 4.7 million puts. So, I mean, that's showing us that there is definitely some bullish action in the options market. Going on to my filtered flows, which are really important to me. So this is where I filter out $200,000 bets and above. So those are positions that are being opened only. So these are opening transactions that are greater than $200,000. And out of the money contracts only, and then also filtering out sweeps. So filtered results showing that spec bettors are lined up more towards the call side. Some notable names here was the Palantir $26 calls, the Netflix 530 strike calls, Gilead 87.5 calls, and Costco 325 calls. So those are just some of the top names with the top bets behind them in the options market. And something I did differently this week as well, I was playing around with our option flow provider, Cheddarflow, and we filtered out the IV of greater than 50% on top of this scan, and we saw a PC ratio of only 0.18, which was equated to 102,000 calls versus 19,000 puts. So we're seeing in the results of that, after digging through that data, we see a lot of the story stocks, a lot of the hot names come up on that scan. So some of those were Palantir again, DraftKings, BOK, Neo, and Baidu. I think there was one more. I have the tab open. BOK is wrong. This is BLOK, block. Yeah. So based on this flow, we can assume that there is a rotation in the option and the spec better market. It's definitely underway with these previous readings flowing more towards the bearish side in the previous week. So if you take a look at like February, mid-February to March flow data, you were definitely more on the bullish side for filtered bets and the unfiltered, unscanned bets. So you can anticipate a bounce there. Possibly that's one thing that can contribute to developing a thesis for further upside in the market. Now, it's not always tell all, it's never 100%, but it is one little piece that you can use for anticipating another move up, right? So now going into scanning, just taking a look at some of the names that popped up on the scanner. So for this week, we had Tesla, Square, FUTU, Peloton, and Billy. That's on aggressive filters, filtering a lot of the RVOLs, and did a little bit of short float percentage filters as well. Because on a week like this, there's going to be definitely a lot of tickers to watch, especially with this headline. And if we get that bounce, there could be a lot of stocks to watch. And for me, I tried to really hone in this week on what could produce the best opportunities on a weekly basis. And by filtering out a little bit for short float, I think that would be better for the upside. The names that may break through certain levels, if that tape looks good and if we see squeezes, that's something that'll help me make more and be more confident and have more, size and such behind my ideas, right? So taking a look at the second scan, you have a slew of names there. Some notable ones would be, I guess you could say, I like the Facebook, I like Pinterest, I like the social media stocks. Boeing is certainly one on my watch list, and Baidu and Nvidia also made the list as well. So I'll actually just finish wrapping this whole PowerPoint up or document up. We can go over this, and then we'll jump into charting, and I can break down some of the names and the levels and such that I'm looking at for the watch list. So taking a look at your SPYs and Qs, you had that strong bounce on Friday's session with both indices closing just shy of 2%. Something to note here is that the SPYs definitely look stronger than the Qs, as the SPYs were able to take out their March 4th highs while the Qs were not. On the way down, so once we came off those highs and started selling off, we did see that the Qs were weaker than the SPYs, so we will continue to monitor that relationship throughout the week. Now taking a look at volatility, you have your volatility tagging highs of 30.03, and recent lows were 23.11. We want to pay very close attention to volatility products this week, so that would be the TVIX, the UVXY, the VIX, and see if there are any arbitrage opportunities in the volatility names, as well as where volatility moves. If we continue to bounce, how hard is volatility going to drop, and so forth. Another thing that I'll actually mention here is the volatility inside the options markets. You had a lot of names come to the downside If you're trading a name with that was very, very extended to the downside, you want to make sure that you're paying attention to the implied volatility level on the option contract that you're trading if you are trading options, and really just make sure you know it this way that you can size accordingly and place the proper emphasis towards the right type of setup and trade. That's something that I think is very important to pay attention to, implied volatility on your options contracts, especially when you had this kind of down move. And if we bounce, you want to see how that comes out and continue to monitor that situation. So I'm calling out market internals this week as well to sort of get a gauge of that Friday move. So you had the ticks read the high of about 1,200, showing pretty strong buy pressure on Friday's move up. Your ADD shows a nice move up as well. The 5-minute chart looked clean. The one on the left, right hand side there is a 60-minute. You can see there's just continuous uptrend there on that line chart, but also I dived into a 5-minute and it looked very clean as well. Very shallow pullbacks, and it just kept, we just kept moving upwards on that Friday session. So earnings for this week, I won't go over all of them, but some of the notable ones that I am looking at is Wish, Dix could be one of them, AMC for sure, that's probably going to be the most hyped up this week, EXPR, Express. Other than that, I don't see really much that I'm interested in. Yeah, I would leave it up to that, AMC, Express, ORCL might be a good one as well, Oracle, and maybe Ulta. So those are just some of your earnings names to watch. Taking a look at the economic calendar, you have just a typical week here. Tuesday, 6 a.m. Small business index, wholesale inventories on Monday morning, 10 a.m. And then you have your Wednesday CPI at 8:30, a 2 p.m. federal budget. That's definitely something to look out for. And then Thursday, your jobless claims, and Friday, your consumer sentiment and PPI. So taking a look at my weekly watch list, this is what I've filtered it down to so far. Like I said, there's probably a lot of names to watch this week, but what I'm really focusing on this week, and I'll talk a little bit about it on my conclusion, is I'm looking for stocks that had relative strength on the way down. So, maybe stocks that really bounced on Friday and had a good day, or stocks that held up very well even when the market was lower. I think the number one player in this right now would probably be Boeing with that reopening trade that's pretty hot right now inside Boeing and industrials. You know, that's the leading sector, and that's one vehicle that you can use for trading because it has that relative strength. It has a sub kind of sentiment underneath the overall market sentiment, and that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for things that have strong, strong catalysts, strong RVOL, strong trading data, such as the institutional ownership and short float percent. I'm taking all of these things, I'm piecing them together, and I'm looking for the most favorable name. Okay, so just to go over the watch list there: Palantir, SPY's Q's, of course, Tesla, Facebook, Square, FUTU, Boeing, Baidu, Peloton, Nvidia, and CRM. So I'm going to go over all of these names, but just to conclude real quick, I'm really paying attention to the futures open along with that pre-market. Now that we have the stimulus headline, I'd like to see how overall markets react to it and then decide what names to take to kind of hone in on. If we see the continuation play, I'd really like to focus on the names with the relative strength compared to the market, because those could be the ones that continue to be strong, the leaders, because of their volume and so forth. If we see the pop and drop, I'd like to focus on the high RVOL names as well, but more based towards market plays and market names, and possibly even use the SPYs and Qs as trading vehicles. Maybe a little bit of Tesla as well on the downside. Those three names really on the way down have produced the most P&L and have kind of offered some very favorable trades and setups in the past few weeks. So that is it for the document. Now let's jump into some charts. All right, so we'll start with Palantir. So Palantir got on Friday, this stuck out to me. Palantir had 174 million in volume. That's more than your SPYs. That's more than your Qs, which was pretty interesting. The total trades on that were 865,000 trades. That's using my TradeStation filter. And taking a look at this, I'm actually going to add one support there. So that's your daily. I'm actually going to flip to a weekly on this one. So taking a look at this weekly, you put in your high around that $39, $40 area, sold off pretty hard. You dropped your low into 20 even and then bounced and continued to close at exactly 23.30, 23.95 on the week. So what I'm looking for is a move outside these weekly ranges. It's a little tricky to navigate because, these are more like range trades, and what I'm really looking for is that breakout above the top of the range. And the top of the range for me would be that 29.50. If I see Palantir get above 29.50, I'm looking for a trade towards 31.30, 32, and then maybe perhaps back to that 35, and then we'll see from there. So that's Palantir. This one I think is really just waiting on a catalyst. I spoke to people at Benzinga actually the other day. I was on their show, and they're also looking out for a catalyst. They think that this needs a move to the upside with a catalyst, and I'm totally agreeing with that. And I think that, let's see if we get that this week. That'll definitely be a name that's in play, especially with the volume that it's been doing. So taking a look at next one is Tesla. So Tesla, you had this significant bounce off the lows the other day. The range is very high in this one. The ATR has expanded all the way up to 79. Um, I got 79 on TradeStation, and the Finviz was showing me, I believe, 48 or 50. Yeah. So Finviz says 48, TradeStation says 79. Nonetheless, we'll see it in the pre-market if Finviz updates it, but nonetheless, there's definitely been a very big range expansion in this, and that really offers us with a lot of trade opportunities for a lot of different type of traders. If you're a momentum trader, you could possibly find some momentum trades to this in either side. You could see that, this had a monster move down. The price action here was not that great, but that could be due to just prior levels and prior sort of supports and resistances and such. But you can also scalp this. This has this has always been the stock that has a little bit of something for everyone. In the last few weeks, before this move down, it didn't really give us that, but nonetheless, the levels that I'm watching would be the 600, 598 inflection. You have your supports down at 579, and then below that, you have that 557, 558 area. And then towards the upside, you have the resistances of 632.50, 669, and then all the way up to 735 at the high. So that's Tesla. Next one is Facebook. I'm going to go over to a daily. I like this, and I also don't like it. If you look at the recent consolidation pocket, you have it on that 267-ish, and then you have your inflection 260 and then 254. Let's see what a weekly looks like in this. So this is more of a messy chart. It has a lot of overhead for sure, but I think if we can break out past this 273, it could continue to tag highs. I wouldn't be a holder of this. I wouldn't swing this by any means. This is also another name that arguably you just need a catalyst in it. But what I do really like about it is the overall strength. Market dumped quite a lot, and this really did hold up. Albeit it was in consolidation in about a 12-point range. That's not bad. Definitely better than some of the other names. So that's Facebook. That's one that I'm watching. Next one is Square. So Square had this nice bounce up and a nice move up in the aftermarket. Um, Taking a look at this one's pretty simple. I mean, looking at a daily support of, and see, here's the thing, a lot of these charts have these wick lows, and they were all bought up off the lows. So, what I like to do is just find one area that was near it and call it support or call it inflection. So for that, I'd be watching like 213 area. I also like to put a level out at the body of the daily, and I usually do that in the pre-market depending on what the move was. Um, but yeah, 212 support, looking at that for Square, and then 223 at the high. Break of 223, maybe you see a move towards that 229, 230 area, and so forth. And this one came up on the list with high R vol, so that's kind of why it's there. And I can see, if you look clearly, this had a nice bounce up on the other day. So that's Square. BA is another one. So I already talked about BA. Remember I said that the industrials were strong. This one has that catalyst, sort of underlying headline of the reopening trade. That one looks pretty strong to me. Looking for this to take out that 230 high, and then looking for 235, and then taking out that 238 would look good as well. I'll just show you weekly on this as well. You can see weekly, I mean, didn't close very strong, but let's see, you know, none of these plays that I'm saying are really just like, they're not all finalized and stuff. The pre-market is always going to move, and we'll see what reaction we get in the morning. So that was BA. Next one is Baidu. Taking a look at daily, daily in Baidu. You had that nice same kind of daily candle there, closing near your 262. Zoom into 4 hour on this one. Yeah, so Baidu, same thing here, kind of levels here, 260, 248, your support, and then 277 for resistance. Taking a second look at this one looks a little bit weaker. I think maybe, possible scenario we could have is a dip into like this 256. This would be ideal if it dips into 256, finds some support, and continues to move upward. That would be very um, ideal, but let's see. I think this one may consolidate, but let's see what the market brings us on Monday morning. So that was Baidu. Peloton. Peloton, another high R-ball name that popped up on the list. This one you can see almost closed green, so that's one to look out for. This one I'm looking more for a range break. If you break that 107, I think you got to trade up to like 110. This one's kind of a simple and easy kind of technical trade. Kind of a scalp, if all else fails, like this is what I'd be looking for. It held up very nicely in the post market as well. So let's see how that one goes. I like this one for a little bit of a play to the upside. And then I have Nvidia. Nvidia pretty strong here as well. Bigger move in the post market. So this one also just almost closed green. If you kind of update that daily and you factor in the post market data, obviously that's not how it's done, but if you just visualize that, then you can clearly see that this pretty much closed at the opening range. This also looks good for another range play. That 504 to 520. This one's a bit of a thicker stock, so higher ATR, but with that, it's also lower volume. It moves a little bit slower, and those options are a little bit trickier to get into because they're spreadier. Let's see, maybe you get a pullback and a rip tomorrow in this one as well. Depends what the overall market does with this one. This one has a beta of, let me check. Actually, this one's probably, yeah, 1.44 beta. All right, so it's high. You can consider that high beta, I guess. Not bad. And then the last one on the list was CRM. So taking a look at CRM's daily, you have this one closed green. So this one's pretty interesting because it closed green, just shy of its little 213 resistance, and you have this overhead kind of consolidation pocket in that 212 to 220 range. So let's see how that kind of plays out. Yeah, there's a 4 hour. All right. That's pretty much all I have to present. If anyone has any questions in the chat or any tickers they'd like me to go over, please don't hesitate. And would love to go over some more tickers if you guys have any. So Steven asked, what does overhead mean when you were talking about Facebook? So take a look here. We'll hop back into Facebook. So he asked, what does overhead mean? So this is what I call overhead. If you look at, let me see if I can draw it for you. This is what I call overhead. Like a lot of kind of weird, just choppy price action, you could say, when a stock is above, kind of between two levels when it's just over. So, when you have this sort of choppy price action up there, I think it looks even better on the daily, yeah. So, if you take a look here, like this is what I call overhead. There's just a lot of stuff going on up there. You can see like pretty much through all of this. So like on a name like this, I'd be a little bit more cautious as to where you get out, right? So Disney reopening Parks Play. Yeah, this one looks good on the daily. This is another one that closed strong as well. This could definitely be a name. You want to see if this gaps up in the, oh wow, it gapped already in the post on the news. Yeah, this looks good. This looks good if you can keep it over the gap. If it holds its gap, it could continue to move upwards, I think. You have some decent ranges. Definitely one with a catalyst compared to the market sentiment. So it's another reopening name, you could call it. I like it. Yeah, I think if you hold the gap, it looks really good. Even if you retrace the gap, I'd like to see them retrace like no more than half of the gap and see if they continue to move it up on that. They moved it up 6.75 points, 3.5%. That looks pretty strong to me. So if you look at daily, actually, your daily, I'm going to change the color to this. So your daily would be right around here, the purple line. So you're near the highs if you look at it. I'm actually going to just delete this one then. So yeah, so you're near the highs. If you can stay above this 195 within the first half an hour to an hour, it looks nice for move back to its all-time high. It's a good catalyst as well. Snap. Some thoughts on Snap maybe runs after 58. So here's the thing. I mean, you can, tag the high of any you could tag the high of almost any daily that's happened in the chart, and you can say like, once it takes out 58 or once it takes out that daily high, it can continue to run. And while this is certainly a chart pattern or certainly a candlestick pattern for, a bounce, these are hammers and pins that you're seeing everywhere. You just want to watch out for the price action, and you really, really want to pay attention to the sentiment. Now, while this is a social media name, I would be a little bit more, lenient to the upside because the social media names have a little bit better sentiment at the moment, um, compared to some other things in the market, in my opinion. So definitely, yeah, it could run at 58, but you also just want to map the territory and really make sure you know your prices. Like, all right, if you get 58, are you looking for 60? You're looking for 59.50. What are you going to do up here at 64? And really, if you're going to trade something like that, make sure you're watching the overall market as well. Make sure you're watching your SPYs and your Qs, and you see how the price action in that unwraps compared to your name. So that's my 2 cents on the snap. So we have another one, BBBY. This is Bed Bath and Beyond. Bed Bath Beyond weekly. So you have the highs of 32.05, lows of 27. Pretty big range for this kind of stock. Closed at 28.09. Another support 25. And taking a look at it daily. That daily looks alright. I think you're looking for a weekly breakout. I mean, you look for that weekly range breakout between the 26.5 and the 32.05, possible. All right, so that pretty much wraps it up for today. Thank you all for tuning in. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and share this with all of your trading friends. We look forward to joining you next week for another episode of The Week Ahead. Take care, everyone, and